What's up, everybody? We got our acquisitions team from around the country here. We got Robert, who leads our Florida team. We got Dusty, our farm acquisitions and farming team. We got Frankie, who leads our Houston team, and Dory, who leads our entire residential real estate teams for the company. And so we're going to talk shop and discuss some of the things they got going on and some of the conversations. Dusty, why don't you kind of tell people what you got going on and where you're at in the world today?
Right now, we just went under contract. We're in the negotiations on our fourth Idaho piece of property. We're really focusing right now on economies of scale. So we're trying to get everything as close to the main ranch that we bought a while ago, trying to get everything as close together as we can, just for economies of scale. And we've increased basically our scope and what we're trying to find. Currently in Utah, looking at some property that will allow us to run about somewhere between 5 and 10,000 acres worth of hay production and some more of the grains. With the world the way that is right now, we want to focus a lot on a lot of our grains. They say that wheat's going to be the new sexy crop, so we're really focusing in on that, on property that will allow us to do that. We've got basically Tennessee should be closing here in the next few days, and then we also have another property in Georgia under contract that we're doing our due diligence on right now, making sure that it's a good fit. So right now, building out a team so that we can handle, bring in really get into that next level of growth that we need to achieve. A lot of exciting things are going on. We're constantly researching the market and also trying to make sure that not only are we ahead of it, but we're kind of the priority. So we're making basically a lot of market relationships. So we're the first call if something pops up on the market within certain areas. We've been the first call a couple times now. It's been kind of nice to be on the front end of the market, so we done a good job with the relationships, kind of growing there. So
with Tennessee, we close on that tomorrow. And how many acres is that?
That's just under 1,400 on that particular property. Georgia was about 1,000.
We're RAD Diversified, so we're going to flip across the nation to Robert. And I know, Robert, you had a number of deals go under contract this last week. Just tell a little bit about the deals you put under contract, how you found them, some simple things.
We got a couple deals, actually 4 deals under contract last week. 2 of them were kind of like on canals up in like the Hudson area. The other ones are in St. Pete. Smaller homes, nothing crazy. They're 12 to 1,500 square feet. But the price per square footage in St. Pete alone is pretty hefty. So those homes are actually pretty valuable. The Hudson one is pretty nice as well. And then actually, I believe our property, the 64 acres in Lithia, just closed. So we're going to be starting that new construction. That's going to be a fun process. That's going to be nice.
Hey, Dory, that's a great view. Appreciate you sharing that with us. I'm going to flip back to Frankie in Houston, right? Frankie came on board with the company. You worked in Philadelphia for over a year plus, and now you made the big move to Houston. Talk to us a little bit about what you got going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only made a big move, but am currently making the big move right now. I'm halfway across America, driving my way to Houston right now. In terms of Houston, right now, we have about 40,000 leads that we're looking to vet. We're working with a wholesaler in Philadelphia that we know very well, who has a great system, and we're looking to pass some leads on to him so that he can help us vet some leads and just start getting the whole thing moving a bit. One of our acquisition agents, Josh, already got partnered on a deal. He partnered on a deal with RAD Diversified and one of our inner circle members down at a house in Galveston, which is a little bit further from Houston, but it's the beach area down there, so it's really nice. But yeah, I'm really excited to get down there, start working with Josh, our other acquisition agents down there, Melissa, who's helping us with some of our real estate agent needs, finding my own house, and building out the market for RAD Diversified. Should be really exciting. New chapter in my life, trying to take advantage of the opportunity that RAD Diversified's given me.
Talk about the biggest deal you did this year.
Biggest deal I've done this year was the 22 home deal, 22 home portfolio, all from one seller, in one area in Philadelphia. It really helped me figure out how to work larger deals and get those kind of, million plus deal closed and through the finish line, and what it does for the company. I mean, we're not only working with them for the 22, but they just sold us another 12 that we have under contract as well. So that's really nice. And I'll never leave Philly. I mean, I'm still running numbers for houses in Philly. Me and one of the new acquisition agents in Philadelphia are working a 43 home deal right now that we're trying to get an offer out for. So I mean, it never stops. I'm still going to be getting offers in Philadelphia from people since I've made connections there, and I'm just going to pass those on to the Philadelphia acquisition agents.
Well, it's pretty amazing to think we go through these progressions with RAD Diversified, right? When I first started, I was obviously the first acquisitions, right, agent for RAD Diversified. Back then, I think we were, DHI Holdings, DDH fund. We had our first private equity fund, and I was the one acquiring deals. I was the one going to auctions. I was the one buying them, those kind of things. Over the years, our team has continued to grow, right? We don't even have, anybody on here from our California market. And obviously all of these guys have people that are working for them in their individual markets, acquiring deals that are full-time with the company. The second, senior, acquisition team member, that I brought on to the company was my brother Dory. And he had, very little to no, background in real estate up into that point of his life. I mean, we had, some generational stuff from our parents when we were kids, but not a lot. Tell everybody kind of about the team you lead and the markets you run and all of the different things. I think we've closed on close to $40 million in residential real estate in the last year. And I think that's pretty badass. And it might be more than that. I could be underestimating. I probably am underestimating that. But go ahead, Dory.
Yeah, we're continuing to progress, to grow, very accelerated growth. I mean, we're looking at currently, we probably have about 50 acquisitions under contract, including the land farm acquisition that Dusty is talking about, as well as putting other ones of those. Currently, that's pretty, on a 45-day strain. That's that's about what we have, is about 50 contracts. We're working to accelerate getting more contracts done more quickly. So, getting under that 30-day. So then we'd have 50 under 30 days, and by the end of the year, the goal is to have 100 contracts on a monthly basis, and again under a 30-day stream. I lead markets, and obviously you already heard about Tampa, you heard about Houston. Dusty's up in Idaho. We're looking in Tennessee and Utah. We also have New Jersey, Pennsylvania, as well as continuing to develop other markets as well. So we have 12 to 15 full-time acquisition agents. We have 3 to 5 market leaders. As we continue to grow, that'll grow as well. 10 full-time, just working the real estate professionals out of my office, as well as literally probably 50 to 100 contractors working in the different markets. Again, a good chunk of those work exclusively for us, only work on our projects. And then, we have some that we have in the rotation as, we do those waves of, where we have a little bit more working, or there's a little bit of a slump, or if they haven't proven themselves yet, for us to bring them internally, because that's really the critical thing. We want to work with them first, make sure that we get along and we like their quality of work and obviously the prices that they're able to deliver to us. And when that's the case, then we bring them on internally and make them part of the RAD team.
So unwrapping, what we're doing, here as a company is fascinating to me because, I always had a breakthrough years ago that every time I acquired a property, I was acquiring capital, right? And what I mean was, if I bought a property for 100 and it needed 50,000 in rehab and it was going to be worth 200,000, I just made $50,000. So I was just like, I just acquired an extra $50,000 in capital by making that money. And that's just kind of how the mindset of what I had when I looked at it. And I always said, if I could get more leverage and put less than 50,000 down, I could almost double my money, on an average, real estate acquisition. Does that happen? Yes, very rarely. But at the same time, be able to make 40 to 50% on a deal is very common for us. Return on our money is fairly easy for us at this point. I want to talk a little bit before we start talking about finding deals. I want to talk a little bit about how we evaluate deals, how we decide a deal is a good deal versus a bad deal. And I think because we'll talk about different tools and different ways that you guys are finding deals, because they're different for all of you, right? Every single one of you has different tools that you're utilizing to find deals, whether it's mass advertising to bring in phone calls, or it's utilizing online resources, or utilizing connections and wholesalers. And so, but let's talk a little bit about the difference between a good deal and a bad deal, and how you're making those determinations. And let's start with you, Frankie.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Some of the things that I'll figure out, is there a reason they would want to sell to us? Because we're investors, and we're not going to pay top dollar or market value for your house. We're always trying to find a deal, and that's the whole point of our business and our company, to make money. And that's what we live in. So a couple reasons why they would want to sell to us. Is there what's the pain that they have? Is there a death in the family? Are there bills piling up? Is the house in disarray and they can't take care of it? There's plenty of reasons why someone would want to sell to us. So it's finding, it's sifting through all of our leads, all of the dirt that we have, finding the couple pieces of gold, the pieces that, would want to sell to us, and then trying to find deals on those. It's not spending too much time on a deal that isn't a deal and wasting my time. It's finding the pieces of gold, and then, all right, now what can we do with these pieces of gold?
Yeah, I think one of the smart things that Frankie said there, everybody, if you pull it out, is one of the things he talked about is the quantity, right? When you look at a lot of deals, you can tell the difference between a good deal and a bad deal. And I think that's very, very smart, because when you're only looking at a couple of deals, only looking at one, two, or three, you're like, I got to do this deal. Like I hear people all the time, right? Because people come from that scarcity, mindset. It's so much in the world. And as you look at a lot of deals, you don't get scarcity mindset. You don't get afraid of the next deal mentality, right? And I think it's one of the things I've coached, my guys on from the beginning is like, hey, just move on to the next deal, right? Nobody cares if you don't do this deal. Nobody cares if we don't get this deal under contract. Nobody cares if this deal doesn't close. We move on to the next deal. And it's always the next deal mentality. And so you look at the quantity, and then he says, searching for gold, right? What you look for, you will find. And so as you're looking at a lot of deals and you're sorting through and you're going through them, you start to have almost like a matrix kind of viewpoint of stuff where you can start to see things that other people can't see. Now, if you look at too many deals all at once, sometimes your eyes start to get blurry because you're looking at them, like at midnight, and you're trying to sort through, different types of deals and stuff. But at the same time, that's where you start to see things that other people can't see, because you're looking at a large quantity of deals, and then you're able to start seeing the difference between good deals and bad deals. Robert, talk about bad deal versus good deal.
Bad deal versus good deal. Try to avoid in Florida is anything that's wood framing. I just try to avoid it. If it's not a block home or a slab or anything like that, just because it rains and the weather's so bad, it's going to be a nightmare. Good deals. Now I'm starting to look for, like in St. Pete, I was talking about earlier, price per square foot is $300 to $400. Now I'm looking at, hey, can I add 100 square or 500 square feet or 1,000 square feet or something along those lines? Windows play a good factor out here too. If I have to replace the windows, then that's a little bit harder than if I don't have to. But I mean,
how long it takes for windows to be delivered.
Yes, on top of that, and then since a lot of the homes that we get are either on the water or near the water, if you're X amount of feet from 5,000 feet of more of open water, then you got to have weatherproof, hurricane proof, and then once you start talking about that, then your glass starts to become an inch thick, and it starts to get expensive, and then it can literally make or break your deal. I mean, I don't worry about the electrical and plumbing, because we take care of that stuff, but the windows plays the biggest factor for us as far as on stuff like that. And then on top of that, yes, the 12 to 16 weeks, and then there's delays, and then it's like 20 to 24 weeks, and then then you're like, all right, well, where's my order at? And then the deal is pretty much done, but fully rehabbed, but it's just we're literally waiting on the windows, and it's a nightmare.
It's fascinating, to hear the difference between Frankie and Robert, right? Because when Frankie started with us, what, two and a half years ago, Frankie?
I'm at a year and a half now. Yep.
Year and a half. So I say 2.5 years. Time is slower than I thought.
Goes quick, yeah.
So year and a half, right? And Robert started with us how long ago? About 6 months ago, Robert?
8 months now or so, 8-9 months.
Okay. So when Frankie first started, was probably dead middle of when COVID first hit, right? And all we were buying at that point was off market, undervalued deals that we were finding that gold in the middle of a mess. And then when Robert started, he got trained in that style, but he got to Florida and we started going deep into value add real estate, right? How do you add square footage? How do you find, this rehab property and value add real estate? And so, two different kind of mindsets. It's fascinating to hear both of them talk about it differently. Let's go over to Dusty, right? Dusty, the difference between good deal and bad deal. I know you and I have looked, at hundreds and hundreds of farms together, and that means you've looked at, 10 times that, than what we've looked at together. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think we're all under the same understanding that we're trying to reduce our risk. And I think for me, one of the things I learned when I was quite a bit younger is my dad said something along the lines that the best deals are the deals you walk away from, because it gives you the education on what's going on in the area. And I didn't really fully understand it until probably here in the past few months, where I'm looking at all these properties. I got a lot of our phenomenal investors are sending me constantly properties that they see and they want us to look at. So I go and I vet them and make sure that they're applicable to what we're trying to achieve. And it's funny because the further I get into some of these, they seem like they're really good on paper, but when you dive into them and do a lot of research, you call the local, so one of the tricks that I use is I call the local, some of like the co-ops and places like that that have fertilizers and so on and so forth. I just call them up and say, hey, I'm looking at this place over in your vicinity. What kind of crops can I grow? And I just pick their brain, and it's amazing how they want to be the man. So they tell me all the information that they have. And then I just realized that this particular piece of property may not be a good fit for us because we'd never make any money on it. And so it's just a little bit different because it's such a large quantity of land that sometimes you gotta be really careful. You don't look at the property and say, oh, it's beautiful. It looks like it's a place where I could, basically spend all your time, but it's not about necessarily the property and how sexy, let's say, it looks. It's about what is it really doing for our bottom line and how does it really play into what we're trying to accomplish.
I like that. Not falling in love with the property, is really important. And I think, all of us acquiring properties over the years have found properties that, we fell in love with, right? Properties we liked more than the others. And suddenly, that after repair value or just the value, the price of the property starts to climb up a little bit, and the cost to fix the property starts to climb down a little bit, and the cost of improvements. And so it's always fascinating as you look at things. Dory, great story. Tell us about the property you fell the most in love with.
Are you hinting towards a specific property?
No.
Yeah. I mean, I can say too, just, obviously we've done a lot of auctions as well. So, you get emotional, you get, that adrenaline pumping at an auction, and you definitely can go way past your max bid very quickly if you're not paying close attention. But I can tell you there's a 1790s farmhouse that we're working on right now, and definitely just became a little too enthralled with it. And and I mean, it's a beautiful home. It's got a lot of great history, but when you're working with 22-inch thick stone walls, it changes the dynamic of the rehab substantially. And then when the city makes you pour a 2-footer on top of your second floor rock wall, that way that everything's level and plumb and clean. Normally you pour footers in the ground. When you have to put it up 18 feet in the air, it gets very complicated very, very fast and becomes a painful reminder of, hey, it doesn't matter how awesome the property is. It all comes down to numbers and what it's going to cost. This is a business at the end of the day. So yeah, I've made that mistake more than once. And I was just loving hearing the acquisition guys talk too, because they're just all talking about, Robert's talking about the pragmatics of, getting the materials, and, Frankie's talking about personality, the meeting with, the individuals and meeting their needs and partnering with them to make a win-win situation. And Dusty's talking about how, we just dig deeper than, anybody else that we know of or ever even seen, to get the best information. And when you have the best information, you make the best deal. So it just brings warms my pea-picking little heart to hear everybody just talking about the different dynamics and all the different trainings and how they're implementing them, across the board in all of our markets. So that was just awesome.
It's fun to listen to our team go through, these different paths and different avenues, as they talk about it. And it's funny, I was thinking, there's one, negotiation technique, and we'll get into more negotiating techniques all of the time, right? But there's one negotiating technique I think I've hit, whether it's Dusty working on farms or it's Robert, working on houses, right? And it's with realtors, right? And realtors are always trying to get us to make another offer or a second offer, right? Against ourselves and stuff. And so, Robert, what do I say, with, the current market and realtors trying to get you to, up your offers and those kind of things? What do I always say over and over?
Make them counter.
Yeah. How about you, Dusty? Same thing?
Oh yeah. For sure.
And it doesn't matter whether it's a $20 million farm that Dusty's negotiating, or a $2 million house that Robert's negotiating, or a $300,000 house that Robert's negotiating, right? Make them counter, right? Don't be the one, and don't be the one don't ever negotiate against yourself. That's more of the strategy that I focus on with these guys when they're working on different deals. And people are always like, well, where do you find your deals, or how do you find your deals, and those kind of things. And I think, we find our deals in all ways possible. Frankie, talk to me about, different ways you found deals over the last, 2 years.
The start of it was obviously, our lead generating service that we had during COVID. Because we used to do a lot of auctions, and when I got brought on, auctions weren't a thing anymore. So RAD Diversified switched their plan of attack to a lead generating service, which was doing really well when I got there. So we'll go and we'll vet those leads, like how I talked about earlier. And another way I'll find leads is while we're there comping out that lead, I'll say, well, we'll look for the for sales. And hey, if we're going to buy this for this, why wouldn't we buy that for that? And that one door opens up that door leads to a real estate agent who has other offers, and just it's doors opening up doors. A lot of the times is how I'll find a lot of leads, scouring the MLS, and then good relationships with wholesalers. A couple good wholesalers could really open up some good doors for you. But yeah, it starts with getting your feet out there and going and do it for sure.
I love these conversations, and those of you that are watching the podcast, make sure you follow the podcast. Make sure you like and get on our Facebook and subscribe our YouTube channel. Right, get down into our links and do that kind of stuff. I'm also, everybody who's on here, we don't sell courses or books or tapes anymore. We used to do a lot of that, actually sell millions and millions of dollars of books and tapes, but we went a long time ago. It's like, we're a real estate company. We make a lot of money in real estate. Why do we need to sell books and tapes? And so we started giving our education and our training to people. So we're going to put a link into what's called our Matrix course that has a lot of the different things that the guys and the team are talking about, but broken down into systematic training and course material for all of you. So follow the podcast. A lot of you are tribe members who are watching this already. We're closing in on close to 1 million followers across our different channels. And so I'd like to hit that million mark. That'd be pretty cool, because we're making a huge impact on people's lives. And I think it makes a big difference knowing that every day when you wake up, what's that motivation, right? It's not always easy to look at the next deal or know that you're going to talk to the next seller or go and get the next. I mean, I love the shit out of it, so I don't have to have a lot of motivation to go get the next deal or look for the next deal. But let's talk a little bit about origin. And my brother Dory is one of my favorite stories. He's been with us how many years now? Is it going on 6 years, Dory?
Yep, going right on 6 years, almost just over 6 years. Yep.
Yeah, and put that in perspective a little bit. I think I started my first business all in, all out, like 2006, 2007. We're in 2022, so 15 years, right? So it took me about a decade to convince my brother to come work with me in business. Right about a decade, yeah. And I remember, just like everybody, right, going to my family. First time I was an entrepreneur, first time I was starting my whole business. Trying to sell my brother, on my dream, trying to sell his wife, on my dream, and being frustrated when they didn't immediately automatically buy into my dream, having no experience, having no background, having no history, right? Not that they didn't believe in me, but believing in what I was trying to create or trying to build, right? It wasn't that time that first time. So I think we've all been through that. So talk a little bit, about your journey, Dory, what you were doing before RAD, where you're at today.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, before RAD, I had 20 years restaurant management experience. Actually, Dutch and I worked in some restaurants together as teenagers in high school and such. Pretty much the day I turned 18, they made me a manager. By the time, I ended up, I come on board with Dutch. I was solidly, I made six figures, year in and year out, and it was financially extremely stable. However, my oldest son was graduating high school, and I looked at all the people I developed with Cracker Barrel, and and how much time I spent with my family, and it was significantly out of balance. You add into that the fact that I was working 60 to 80 hours a week. I mean, honestly, 60 hours would have been a really, really short week for me. I'd have been celebrating, and the fact that the one day off was almost always trying to be sucked into work. I mean, and so long hours, bad, unhealthy food around all the time, and I was it was killing me, and I mean it was killing me, and I was neglecting my family. And we came to the realization that something had to change, and we looked at several different things, and by far the pathway that we felt really led to go to was to partner with Dutch and to work with my brother. And and he brought me on board. Initially I was living in El Paso at the time. We moved to Houston, worked at Houston for a little while, got my feet wet, got an understanding of what was going on, saw the huge opportunity in Pennsylvania, up in the Philadelphia market. And I don't think we were in Houston 6 months before we came up to Philly. And then, and then I've been in Philly ever since now. And, the Philadelphia market's our strongest market currently. Although I know that the guys that we're all training and developing, they're going to give me a run going to give the market a run for its money. So I'm looking to develop those other markets, and I'm super excited. I mean, my heart goes out to my brother for allowing me to have this opportunity. And I'm just so thankful that I'm able to contribute to in a positive manner to the legacy that he's building. It just, gets me all warm and fuzzy. So thanks, bro.
It's funny, good things happen, around Thanksgiving. And I remember I let go, I just given up, right? For a couple of years. I just stopped, pushing the conversation. I'd stopped pushing, and I think when you're young and you start a business and you're finally making a money, right? You kind of maybe have a little bit of a high and mighty mindset, right? That your way is the only way and your way is a better way, and though I know that my way was a better way, right? It doesn't mean it's the only way. And but I think I kind of got into a point where I had surrendered a little bit and wasn't pushing it. And then I think it was after Thanksgiving, I think we're all up late. We went to visit my brother and his 7 kids, and my wife and I don't think we had kids yet. It was just before we had kids, right? And we're up. It's probably getting close to midnight. And I remember Dory's wife, Molly, says, she said, "So Dutch, tell me about this real estate thing you do again," right? And right there, I knew I had them. I knew they were mine, right? At that point in time, I knew they were going to come join. And so we'll go from one Thanksgiving to another Thanksgiving, right? Frankie, who's actually my wife's cousin. I think I probably hadn't seen him very much in probably 6-7 years. I think he was a teenager the last time I had seen him, but 18 months ago, 2 years ago, there was a Thanksgiving where he came over to. We were visiting actually Dory in Philadelphia, which is where Frankie lived. Came over to visit us, and what happened, Frankie?
Just been going off like probably the worst year of my life, with COVID, and I just broken my ankle about a year before that, and I couldn't walk, and it was really tough times. After I got let off my restaurant job because of COVID and I couldn't walk, I just got on my feet and got a job at the grocery store, the local grocery store, because I said, I'm not living at home. That ain't happening. I'm gonna be on my feet. I'm gonna be on my own. I can't go back. So I got a job at the grocery store a week later after COVID hit and shut down the whole city, and worked there for a year. And then, like you just said, you guys came out to visit, and I walked in to you guys' Airbnb, and he said, "Hey, Frankie, how you doing? What are you doing?" And I was like, "I work at a grocery store. I hate my life." And I just saw your eyebrows raised, and it was like, "Well, maybe you should talk to my brother Dory when he gets here about, some stuff." And, I had already been looking into some, investing things myself, and it had already caught my interest. So, Dory came, we had talked, and definitely seemed a little skeptical at first. But, after a couple of days of riding with him, pretty much I didn't have an interview. Dory said, "Hey, get in the car. You're working with me today." Yeah, the rest is history. A year later, here we are.
Talk a little bit, what's changed for you financially as a person.
Oh, dude, no, financially is just one aspect. Everything about me has changed. My whole how I interact with people, how I feel about myself as a human being, how I go about my day to day, and then it definitely stems a lot from my financials, which has just been incredible. I went from making under 20K a year to not having to worry about how I'm going to eat that day. Just going from having to worry about if I'm going to be able to eat that day versus not having to is the craziest mind shift any human being could have.
It's been a long time since I had that mindset to have a refresh of that journey and with us. Like, Frankie was in that weird position that so many people graduate from college are in, right? And obviously you don't need a degree to do what we do, right? But they graduate college. What's fascinating though is they go through that journey, right? And they have this expectation when they hit their 20s of what life is going to be like, right? And lots of times life is very different than what they thought it was going to be, as they were growing up or as they're going through school and those kind of things. And the game kind of changes on them, and there's a suck that happens, right? And I think lots of times for people to make a change, they're stuck in the middle of that suck, and it has to get pretty painful before they're at a point, where they're ready for that change. Robert, I opened the door, for you, and obviously you walked through it. Talk a little bit about where you were and your decision and what life is like.
I was living in Vegas at the time. Same thing as Frankie, working at a grocery store. I was actually working 2 jobs, about 80 hours a week, and I hated it. I mean, it's like literally the same story. And it was in a situation where you're like, all right, what bills am I not going to pay this week that I can afford to pay next week? Or let's park the car in the garage and hide it for repo. To financially now, I don't even check my bank account anymore, like, because there's no need. So it's a huge difference. I mean, it's night and day. And then just being able to spend time with my family now instead of literally going to work, coming home, sleeping for 3-4 hours, and going back to work to work 3 or 4 hours and spending the rest of the day with them, and then it's amazing.
It's fascinating, like how kids can get used to stuff, right? They get used to daddy being gone, or they get used to mom being gone, or they get used to people working hard in different things, and then you get to a point, right, where you're at being able to be home, able to spend more time with your kids, and like they start to question, like, well, why you got to work right now, or why can't you spend time with me right now, versus just an acceptance, because they're used to you being more present, used to you having more time with them, which is pretty cool. Dusty, how about you?
I'm kind of in the situation where I
Well,
was
you were a
more,
little different. You were pursuing me, right? You were like, Dutch, you got to come invest in Boise. You got to come invest. You got to come look up here, and those kind of things. So it is a little, it was a little bit different.
yeah, I think that I kind of feel like I've lived through everything that everybody else has said, right? My situation was probably a little closer to Dory's, but when I was talking to you and I first came on board, I wasn't in a situation where I was hurting financially by any means. I left a 6-figure job. The thing that I was missing was probably living more and doing the things that I wanted to do. So the farming and the ranching aspect is something that I've always enjoyed and always been a part of, and it was always doing it for somebody else. I mean, I had my own stuff too, but it was just such a lot smaller scale. And so for me, it was to be able to live a dream. That's really what made the difference for me. And it took me a little bit of time to come on board, but again, it's because of trying to figure out how to do it and when to do it, right? It was always going to happen in just a matter of when. And so I remember the days that of living with, I've got 6 kids, almost caught up to Dory, but I remember the days living like Frankie and Robert both. And things just got to a point where I was doing a little bit better. It opened, when the door opened, and you and I were talking about different markets, and right in the middle of COVID, it really changed the way I started to see things. And the goal for me is to get to a point where I can spend more time with the family, because I don't get that. Right now with the starting up on the ranch and the farm part of it, we'll work pretty long hours too, but it's all for the company and trying to get to a point where we're all comfortable. And we are so close to that. We are doing so good right now with our acquisitions that it's going to be an exciting, the rest of this year and then into the next is going to be phenomenal. It's going to be a lot of fun. So really that's kind of how I came from, is just, you and I had a discussion and we just slowly started to make it happen.
There's a cycle called the Dream Giver cycle, right? And if you guys download the link or follow the podcast, we have that in the home study course. And if you look at the afternoon of the first day, we do about a 40-minute talk where we go through the Dream Giver cycle. And people are in life got to get to a point where they decide to be uncomfortable, right? In order to change or impact or make a difference in their life. And Frankie and Robert, were uncomfortable because they were forced to be uncomfortable, right? And Dory was uncomfortable, but he accepted. He had gotten to a point where he made good money, and so he was in a very different place than them, and so he went from comfort to uncomfort, and then back into a state of comfort, right? And once you leave comfort, you go into what's called a wasteland, right? And that wasteland is where you don't really know, the difference between doing A versus doing B, who to listen to, who not to listen to, what to do on the journey, what not to do on the journey, and you're searching, but you don't have clear vision because your eyes are very clouded, and there's so much noise and so much information, but then you're also in the pain of 80 hours a week doing something you don't love, you don't like, right? And so there's a jadedness to you when you're in the wasteland, right? And lots of times you go from the wasteland, you go back into what we call sanctuary, right? And it's when you finally hit a better place. And that's where I think Dory was at, where he's making 6 figures, where Dusty was at, where he's making 6 figures, right? And Robert knew what that was like because earlier in his life, he had run his own business and been an entrepreneur and had made money. And so he knew even more so than Frankie how much the wasteland sucked, right? And because he had been to a better place financially before in his life. And so, but the sanctuary is the hardest place to get out of because it's kind of like you're okay, right? You're not desperate, you're not being forced, you're not being pushed, you're making money. You know it's not the dream destination. You know it's not exactly where you want to be, but you are stuck in that sanctuary because it's a good place and because you have security for your family because you have some good things and those kind of things. And so lots of times I think it's even easier to get out of that first comfort zone than it is to get out of the sanctuary when you're making pretty good money and working on going to the next level. It's fascinating, and once you're in that sanctuary, usually we kind of say it's facing the giants, right? And what the giants are the people who've reached a higher pedestal, right? A level, right? That you want to get to, you want to accomplish, right? And lots of people in life, struggle with understanding, what those giants are. And that giant might be knowledge, right? That giant might be a mentor or a person. That giant might be, giving up something, in your life that you need to get up to hit, another level. Crazy because so many people don't know how to interact or face their giants. And so they want to fight the giant. They want to not listen to the giant. They want to rebel against that giant, right? And the challenge is you have to learn to make that giant work for you. And that's a process, whether it's a mindset that you got to shift or a person you need to listen to, or it's something you need to give up and leave behind in your life. You have to learn to make that work for you, right? And there's a surrender in that is very difficult for a lot of people because I always say, the greatest form of leadership is servant leadership, right? And the greatest form of leadership is doing for others, right? And leading them. And so, in that part of that giants to get to that promised land is a journey. And so follow the podcast, become a subscriber, because if you click that link, you'll get access, to that full training on the Dream Giver cycle, along with, tons of amazing other information. I want to talk a little bit about, one decision by each of you, right? Dramatically changed your life when it came to working with RAD, working with me, talking about stepping through that door, right? I always said I'll open doors for people. I'll open doors and see if they walk through. And I'm going to say this, you're four incredible guys that have walked through that door, but I've opened that door 1,000 times, right? Walk through that door. But for every one of you, that walked through that door and not only have changed your life financially, but changed your life completely, there's hundreds that don't see it or don't understand, right? And so, and I'm not talking about people who take the education or people that invest with the REIT. I'm just talking about people just working with us, just that one aspect of it. I open that door constantly. Talk about opening that decision to walk through the door and kind of help people with that critical decision, because it's hard for a lot of people, and they'll spend more time thinking about making the decision than just walking through the door. Why don't you start, Frankie?
Yeah, sure. It was easy. It was easy, probably for me and Rob to both walk through that door. I feel like maybe not Rob as much because he has a family, but for me, I mean, I had no ties, and I had nothing holding me back. I was in a very low point in my life, so I mean, it was pretty easy for me to be able to jump through that door and see, all right, what's behind this door. And now that I get to see what's behind the door, I didn't have much risk behind. So now that I'm enjoying what's behind the door, it's like, all right, cool. Where's the next door? And I kept going from there. The way I brought on probably 3 or 4 of my very good friends at this point, and the way and those all my friends have come from, for the most part, pretty good positions in life as well. And the way I describe it to them is it's a speeding train, and you could wait to grab onto it, but the longer you wait to grab onto the speeding train that's speeding by you, the further down the train you are. Once I saw the speeding train going by me, I'm going to grab on, and I could always jump off if I need to, and I'll be a little further down the road. But I mean, if I like where the train's going, I'll be much happier I grabbed on the train earlier rather than later.
I don't know how many times, I don't know. I mean, I know you hear some of this stuff a lot from me, but, for me, it was really critical that, I was coming from a very successful position. I could not come on board with my brother's company and not be successful. And, I met with some financial planning advisors, some guys who did wealth management, specifically managed real estate and wealth management. I knew from, my wife's circle of friends at our church that we went to was a very wealthy church. And I went and I studied and I investigated and I had meetings with them and I came on board with a plan, and aggressively went after that plan because I wasn't going to be a part of my brother's company unless I could make a big impact. And so the decision, I was a very studied one, and obviously I had to make a change. And, but at the same time, when I made that, the decision was made based on, the pain, right? My pain wasn't wealth. My pain was quality of life, time with family. When I came on board, I hadn't had a Thanksgiving off in over 17 years. And most of those Thanksgivings I worked probably over 15 hours. So I had pain. It was just a different type of pain. But at the same time, it was a very measured, thoughtful decision to have a plan in place. Now, granted, I finished inventory on my last restaurant, and then the next about 2 a.m, and then I had a flight about 6 a.m. and I met you in Houston as we were driving properties for an auction trip, and I Ubered to the next property on your guys' list. And I was standing outside that property, and I just hopped in the van and we got rolling. But you know how it is with plans. As soon as the plan got started, it changed, and it changed several times within the first 6 months, and then I ended up in Philly. And I worked with you, and you helped me continue to see the opportunities and to be able to grab them. So it was a fantastic partnership, and working with you, I'd expect nothing less.
I remember there was a thing I hit Dory with that I obviously believe people, sometimes make decisions from pain points, right? All day long, you can talk about how great something's going to be, but lots of times people don't do things unless they're weighing A and B, and A is a lot more painful than B, and B is a lot more pleasurable, and they decide to go with B, right? One of the things I said to Dory, and he had talked about, his relationship with his oldest 2 sons, what it had been, after working 17, straight Thanksgivings. And I said, the reality is for your children, being present, as a father, I think is really important. But them seeing you walk the walk, right? Them seeing you live, a life of passion, or life you can enjoy, means everything, right? If your kids see you work 80 hours a week, and they see you wear out, and they see you grind, and they see you tired, that can be okay. But if they see you angry, or they see you frustrated, they see you not enjoying life, that's not okay. And if they see that, that's what they'll become. And if they see you put that grind in, and they see that miserableness, right? That's lots of times what they become, because that's the example we set. And I said, what example are you setting by working to a place? Because as well, Dory, at 40, you're 46, 47, 46, right? And you look a lot healthier at 46 than you did at 40. And I think that makes, a big difference on lifestyle choice. Was also example, to your children and to your kids and stuff, makes a huge difference, because you're walking that life. Dusty, and I remember, coming to visit you when I was looking at those first farms, right? And I remember, your family coming to check out, the California spectacle, and trying to figure out, why is Dusty talking to this guy who's coming up here to look at real estate and everything. Granted, you and I were already friends, but obviously, everybody else wasn't, privy to that relationship a whole lot. So talk a little bit about that for you.
Well, I don't know. That's just your insecurity. I don't think they were out there to check out the crazy Californian, but I think they were more interested in figuring out. I had obviously talked to you quite extensively on some opportunities and what to do to grow and to get to the next level, right? Kind of that level up. It's always that desire to be better and to grow, and kind of like you said, show the kids, give them that ability to step into that world, or at least see their dad not only work all the time, but have it pay off, right? Our family philosophy, and I don't do as good of a job as I need to, and I'm working on that right now, is we play hard, but only after we work hard. So we work hard first so that we can play even harder. And so I was trying to figure out how that could be. I mean, I've got 6 kids. It's expensive. Everybody knows what that's like. I was trying to get to that next level. And so I was talking to my parents and my brother and so on and so forth about some opportunities that you and I had been discussing. And they're like, it's a different world for them. And so, and even for me at that point. And so it was a matter of getting you in there, and they wanted to meet you and kind of see what's going on to get a better feel for what the potentials were. That's really what that came down to. And, but for me, if you don't mind me backing you up, one of the things you said at the very beginning here of this particular topic, you're talking about you'll open the door for people. When you and I first started our relationship buying farmland, we were also looking at other opportunities. And that's really where our relationship started on the survival side of things. And I remember talking to you about one of the sellers of the ranches that we had. I went and talked to him, and he's like, "Oh, I run 9 ranches," and he had all this paperwork and was telling me how he loved doing it. And I was like, "Man, that's really actually my dream." It started to become identified, what I really wanted to do. And I remember telling you about it. And then now, was probably 4 or 5 months later, I was kind of focusing more on the survivals project stuff. And then you started to change my role. And I was, at first I wasn't sure how to take that, like everything kept changing on me. And then one day I was sitting there and I had to make a decision. What do I really want from this? And I realized that what you had done is you took me telling you, "Hey, this is my goal. This is my dream." And I didn't realize it at first, but it took me a minute to realize that you were saying, "Well, let's change your role." And you did. You changed my role. And then you started putting me into what I wanted. And it took me a minute to realize that. And so one of the things when you're talking about opening the door for people, not only do you open the door, but you also try to figure out how to incorporate people's, whatever it is, whatever they love, you try to incorporate that into their work. And so another thing that I brought up to you is we were talking about maybe pursuing, opening a butcher shop. Something that I've always kind of enjoyed is processing my own meat for different reasons and the cleanliness of it and so on and so forth. And you said, "Well, let's go do that too." So I just wanted not to digress too far from what you were trying to go into, but that was kind of an important thing I thought that a lot of people should hear about RAD Diversified and the growth of what we're doing is we're trying to put people in positions of success because they love what they do. And so for me to get to where I'm at right now, it was a little bit of a challenge, just from what do I really want to do in my life and opening that door. But really at this point, it's easy.
You had a really good job, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Great company. Good job. Yep.
And so that, is always challenging to walk away from, right? I think there had to be, more and more proof of concept, for you in that situation. And so, we, bought that first farm and you started to dabble, and then we bought the second farm, right? And I think, for you, I think proof of concept, and in reality, really being able to see both the financial, right, but being able to see more than just the financial, being able to see the long-term plan, right, was important for you. Not seeing like, hey, okay, we're going to buy some farms, or hey, we're just going to do this. But then, what's 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road look like? And are you leaving, a great career in order to, for a short window? And it's one of the things, as I teach some of my acquisition guys, when you're first making really good money, it's very easy to go spend really good money, right? Now, I never mind my acquisition guys spending real good money, because then they have to go do more deals and make more money. But I always say, choose a level, right? Choose a level that you're going to live at, and then the money you make beyond that, right? You start putting away to start having that make you money.
Just to follow up on that too, I guess if anybody is listening in and trying to figure out what to do with their life and where to go, leaving a really good paying job with a great company, treating me really well, had a really good boss, everything was perfect. I've been working to that position my whole entire life. But then as I started to get to figuring out what I really wanted long term, it just quite wasn't meeting the bill. And so for me, it was just a matter of sitting down and coming up with a plan, like you said, and saying, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is where I'm going to get, and I'm not going to let anybody stop me. And then you start surrounding yourself with like-minded people. And so one of the things about Amy and Dutch that I've realized, and I think there's several other people within the company that are like this, and I'm starting to realize that more of them are. Everybody has this long-term goal of becoming something more. And so surrounding yourself with people that have a vision that can get, that just keep knocking down barrier after barrier. That's the beauty of RAD Diversified, in my opinion, is all these barriers that you're fighting in life. It's nice to be able to break them down with other people that are doing the same exact thing. The whole conversation we've had has been about each one of us breaking a barrier and then getting to the next level. And then there's another barrier. and just having that mentality of barrier breaking, right? Just getting through it and figuring out what your goals are, and then go chase them, go make them happen. Everybody has the same opportunities to some extent, right? They all have the same ability to make a decision and then go to tackle that next barrier and keep blowing through them. So,
Dory, I know that Molly was on board with you, right? With the journey and the travel and the different things. And you guys had to discuss, making moves and decisions. And I know God plays, a real important part of your decision making. And I know that prayer does as well. And so, talk a little bit about that journey from El Paso to Houston to Philly and now to, really you're, outside of, you're in a, can't think of the name of the city right now, but you're in a suburb, right? And you do a lot more work, outside of Philly and Jersey. But talk a little bit about that journey and some of that decision making.
Yeah, totally killed my momentum already. So no, but anyways, I already talked kind of about the strategic thinking, but yeah, spiritually, it was one of my wife's greatest security factors is financial security, and mine as well. And so this was a huge key thing. We had to pray about it. That we looked at just all kinds of budgeting and stuff like that. And so I wouldn't say she was a resistor. She was all on board for change. But, having, worked with you and had these discussions, in the planning phase, I was like, this is going to be a lot harder than what you think it's going to be. And when we came into Houston, and we were in Houston for a little while, and me being me, my wife, so I'm go big or go home. And we had a team already there. They were doing well. They were continuing to move the ball forward. But I wanted to shoot for the end zone. The ability to shoot for the end zone was in Philadelphia at the time. We moved from El Paso to Houston and Houston to Philadelphia all in less than a year with 7 kids, most of them in the grade school age. It was really, really tough. But at the same time, we were chasing a vision. We were chasing what we could do and what we were capable of. And the big surprise was when, you've said this many, many times, but I'll mention on this podcast, is when we got to Philly and we had a few properties that weren't getting leased as quickly as we wanted. We had a couple leasing agents, and Molly was like, man, these guys are not moving fast enough. And my wife is she's not as patient as some people would say. So yeah, she got 3 properties leased in the first month, and we had leasing agents that hadn't got them done in 2-3 months. And kind of the same thing with the property management. She, just seeing the opportunities and just seizing those opportunities and just going all at them. Just sending everything we have at them and all of our human capital and resources. But at the same time, but sometimes we would do that at 9:00 at night after the kids went to bed, and then we would be at their play after school from 3 to 5. And so getting up in the morning and hitting it, and then taking a break when they come home, and then getting after it, and sometimes processing properties until midnight, trying to figure out what the best way forward was. And so that's like kind of work hard, get after it, but live fully at life with the family and live fully at life with the work as well. So
I look at the journey that you were on, and granted, Molly, being all on board, with Dory is amazing. I just wanted to hear, Robert, that mindset, when you walk through the door, and what people thought, or your decisions. Why did you attack it so strong? Why did you bite down and go for it? That mentality. Tell us a little bit about that. All right, Robert's cut from the team. He's no longer part of acquisitions.
Can you guys hear me?
Wait
a minute, what? I'm sorry. I'm trying to get service. I'm over here walking around trying to, but
I heard that one.
So what you're asking, right, is why did I come out here and attack it so strong, correct?
Yeah, and just kind of the conversation, with family. I know that, I know you made your decision, right? And you gonna make your decision because that's kind of how you do things, and you're gonna go full force into it. The conversations with family and the decision, but just attacking it full force.
So pretty much, yeah. When I came out here to Florida, I came out here without my family for 6 months or so. So that was a little hard. But I grew up playing sports and whatnot. So after going to Philly and meeting Frankie and Chad, I'm like, man, if these guys could do it, I know I could do it better than them. So that had a little part to do with it. But I enjoy doing it. I mean, it's fun. And when I say 3-4 hours of work a day, that's like leaving the house. I mean, it's like an all day process. So it's still we're still working those 60 or 80 hours, but it's a different type of hours being worked. Like you're being able to be home and do your computer stuff or do the phone calls and et cetera and stuff like that. But I'm just very competitive. I mean, that's come to it. I mean, I just know I could be good at something like this, and I enjoy doing it. So why pass up a good opportunity?
It's fascinating because I think Frankie and Robert have a great, competitive camaraderie, right? That goes on. But Frankie, what was your biggest deal you closed this year again?
Yeah, 22 homes, 22, working on more.
Oh,
And I was gonna say, Robert. Yeah, I said the same thing when I decided to run the market in Houston. I said, man, if Robert can run that Tampa market, I can run a Houston market.
Yeah. Good luck.
I think we're about at a close, right? I think what you guys shared today is going to make an impact on some people, going to make a difference on some people. So thank you. I know you're in the middle of a move. Robert, you're out there in the middle of deals. Dusty, you're in the middle of Utah. Looking at a huge ranch operation for a story. I know you were on the move. And so I appreciate you guys taking the time. Out of your busy schedules to do something different, right? And I think balance is key, and Robert's 80 hours a week. Hopefully, we'll slow that down a little bit, but that's his own competitiveness because he definitely wants the Tampa market to do more deals than the Houston market. And so any parting thoughts, anything else you want to share? 30 seconds or less, with everybody. I'll let you start, Dusty.
Hey, I could talk for hours, so I'm gonna take the different approach this time. Everything's great. Thanks for the opportunity.
Dream big and go after it. That's what we've talked about already. So
I love it. Line your dream with your alignment with people, and it's pretty amazing things that happen. Frankie,
Ready to build something in Houston, man. Excited to get going on it, and thank you. Yep.
you're welcome. Go ahead, Robert.
Not a whole lot. Not just the Houston market though. I'm coming from Philly as well. But that's it.
Cool. Well, you guys, there's another market too, a California team which isn't on here, today. But I think you be aware. Phil and Johnny and Laura are going to be coming on real strong too. But I think it's cool. I think it's healthy camaraderie, healthy competition. But we're all in this journey together. And I think that's a part of the RAD journey, right? We see our investors as a part of the team. We see our tribe members as a part of the team, and we love to get a small part of the RAD team on here to be able to share with all of you. And God bless. We'll talk to you all soon.